Hey there, guys, and welcome to another episode of Ask Xterminator. And in this series, you guys ask me questions in the comments, and I answer them. So this video, I'm answering questions from last week, and if you want me to answer questions for next week, leave them in the comments of this current video, and I will answer them. So be anything game related or Factorial game related or just anything really, as long as it's appropriate for me to answer on YouTube. But let's hop right into it here. I already see several like specific game related questions for Factorio, so we'll start with one from Michael. It says, when my game reaches 1 frames per 3 seconds, should I make a new game or install mod to make it less laggy, or should I turn off the power to get 17 FPS? Also, I have biters on. I am using lasers. Uh, I'm not sure what mod you could really install that would like make it less laggy. You could like go into the editor and place down one of the cheaty power sources, and then like turn off and get rid of all your other power generation. Or you could build solar if you don't want it to be cheaty. It's basically the equivalent, because solar is basically just like one calculation and that's it. So that is an option if you want to do that. Um, I'm trying to think like what mods would. I don't really know of any mods that just make it less laggy. So you could do that. You could try to just optimize your builds. Like if you're using robots, there's probably a lot of places just in general where bot travel distance could be shortened. Or if you're using belts, maybe some less belts. Belts are really optimized, but still reducing usage of things wherever you can does help a bit. Um, and yeah, that's the best advice I can give. I don't, without actually seeing the map and stuff, I can't. I don't really know exactly like what other information I can give you, but hopefully that helps. You could just start over as well if you want to do that. So one from Samuel says, any tips for transitioning to mid in game to late game with all the beacons, modules, and stuff? I'm still having trouble getting to a Megabase because I never have enough of everything. So I actually just answered this question. Like they just asked this an hour ago, and I just answered it like as a comment. But I'll answer it again here just so everyone who's listening can get the same answer I gave. And basically, the answer I gave is that like typically what I do is I just start a whole separate base just to make the components for a Megabase. Like just to make like a ton of furnaces, a ton of assemblers, a ton of modules, a ton of beacons, etc. Because usually my starting base just doesn't have the production capability to do that. So I usually leave like my starting base doing some research slowly, and then make a whole other base to make the components to make the Megabase, and then feed it separately with resources. And and then do that and honestly, what I said is a lot of times it just takes AFK time. Like I'll build it and make sure it's running, and then I'll just kind of AFK for a while and just let it make stuff, because I mean it's not a fast process, right? Like you know, yeah. So hopefully that helps. That's kind of the way I would do it. Um, Robert asks, what part of the game do you find the most unpleasant or experience breaking? Oil, fluids, train logistics, spiders, other? Um, I would say, uh, hmm, it's actually kind of an interesting question. I mean, I don't really like the early game. I don't really find it unpleasant or experience breaking. Um, it's definitely like my least favorite stage of the game, if like in terms of like early, mid, late game. In terms of an actual like mechanic or part, like gameplay part of the game, I would definitely say fluids. Fluids, I hate fluids. I rant about this all the time, so I'm not going to go into a huge rant about it again. But fluids just are so dumb in the game, in my opinion. I hate how they work. They're not intuitive. They are a pain in the butt to work with. That is definitely like my least favorite part. That is, I truly find unpleasant, and it really just is not fun. So that's just my opinion. Obviously everything else about the game outweighs that, because I continue playing and I do make it through fluids every time I play. But I just every time I dread doing it. I hate working. I hate building oil builds. I hate working with fluids, trying to route fluids, transport fluids, split fluids, which is just really a pain. I just don't like it at all. Um, John Uh, asks, he says, so cool to hear your name said on a video you enjoy, I guess, like talking about himself. Thank you for answering my question. I've been debating getting Satisfactory, and though I still might for the experience, you provided the information I was looking for. Oh, okay, sorry, I thought that was a question. Yeah, I'm glad I provided the information for you. Um, EPB asks, what is your opinion on this mod? And they're referring to auto deconstruct. They say, I personally use it every playthrough because I see it as a simple quality of life mod. I don't know if you would want to as well. So I definitely know what auto deconstruct is. And basically what it does for anyone who doesn't know is it marks your mining drills for deconstruction when they run out of resources to mine. Um, so basically it just, like if there's robots in the area, they automatically are marked for deconstruction when there's no more resources, and your robots will remove them, which saves you from having to do that. I don't use it, but not really for a particular reason. I guess I just kind of forget about it. I don't have a problem with it. I think it's a really nice quality of life mod for sure. I would agree with you there. Probably should use it. I really, like I said, I have no problem with it. I really have no problem with it. I think I just don't think about it. But yeah, I think it's a good mod for sure. Fox Games asks, as a newly starting gaming channel, how do you maintain a drive and passion playing the same game so much? I've played 300 plus hours of Factorio now and still have goals to achieve and plans to execute. But after several hundred hours of gameplay, how do you keep the drive? I create new goals for myself and new playthrough ideas. And this is kind of similar to another question someone asked a while ago. I forget exactly what the question was, but the answer is kind of the same. And part of it, honestly, is just that I have to because this is my job. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that like I dislike it or anything, but you know, it's kind of that's kind of like asking how do you have the drive to continue to go to work? Like asking anybody that. And well, I mean, I'm lucky that I basically enjoy like most of the work I do. But just like any job, like if I want to earn an income and pay my bills and not be homeless, I have to do it. So kind of just have to come up with stuff and have to continue to, have a drive to do it. But in terms of like, but I come up with new goals. Like, the series I currently am doing on Twitch is ending, and I'm about like this weekend gonna start a new series, and I usually just brainstorm. I ask viewers, I ask my close mods and community members for ideas, and we kind of all just brainstorm and come up with new stuff, and it's just a fun new challenge. It helps a lot to have like interaction, so that's why I like streaming like series usually more than making videos, because I can like interact with the people who are live in chat, and like that helps a lot, and then they can interact with my stream with like Twitch integration. And like interact with my game, and it just is like that alone just adds fun and a new experience every time. So that's how I do it basically. Yeah, I mean, really at that point, like if you have a lot of hours and you're kind of having a hard time like finding drive, um just like at that point you kind of have to just come up with your own goals. Like you can't just can't just say, okay, well, I'm just gonna launch a rocket again. You have to, whatever it's gonna be. Well, this time I want to launch 2 rockets a minute, or I want to make 1,000 seconds a minute, or I want to make a base where every single production area is separated, or I want to, play on a death world, or etc. etc. Give yourself a different challenge that requires a different type of factory and different set of skills to do every time. Windows Agent asks, I know you've probably or previously answered a question about the future of Factorio, but specifically, do you think Factorio could develop some sort of currency, probably for post-late game, if it's called like that? Like an in-game currency? I don't really understand the question. Like, I mean, sure. I, like, I'm trying to think. Like, sure, it could develop a currency. I don't really know what it would be used for. Like, I guess you could like sell items your factory produces for currency, and then like use the currency to like get more items. There's several mods that like already do that. So, um, yeah, I don't know. Like it certainly could. I don't really see that being a super great like late game, because it's kind of just going in a circle. Like you could sell like everything your factory makes for currency, but then what do you do with the currency? Well, I mean, I guess you could like upgrade your factory for more, I mean, it basically just becomes like a clicker game at that point. It's like you're just getting more to upgrade more, to get more, to upgrade more, to get more. I don't know. That doesn't really seem like the spirit of Factorio, to be honest. Fred G asks, what do you think is the most fun thing to do in Factorio? Is it making blueprints, fixing bottlenecks? Similarly, what do you dislike doing? Well, I'm going to start with the second part of your question and just refer you to my answer a few minutes ago about fluids. And then the first part of your question, I think the most fun thing for me to do, it's definitely different for everyone. But for me to do is probably making like Megabase builds and particularly bot ones and like making them the most efficient as possible and like coming up with designs for them. So yeah, like making blueprints. I don't necessarily find fixing bottlenecks the most enjoyable. I prefer to just like my enjoyment comes from like making the builds initially and like testing them and then which I guess kind of is fixing bottlenecks, I guess, and then making them better. But um yeah, that's kind of the most enjoyable. And then kind of to go with that, the second is just sitting back and watching everything I've made work. Like that's a huge um yeah, that's like a huge part of the enjoyment for me. um Tyler asks, have you competed completed all the Factorio achievements? Which one do you think is the hardest to complete? I have completed basically none of them. I'm not an achievement hunter. I really have no interest whatsoever in achievements. Um, so I just don't do them. I've completed some of them by accident, like um, just by playing. I get them. I guess the one I think is the hardest, like that I haven't actually tried it, but just like in my mind, what would be the hardest is probably I don't know. I want to say Lazy Bastard, like for me personally, just because that style of play like would drive me crazy. Um, so basically that or the one to like I don't know. Like the rest of them really aren't that hard. I don't think. I mean, completing the game in 8 hours. I think I've never done it. I think that would actually be a challenge for me because I'm not a fast player. Like it certainly can be done. Like tons of people do it. It's not like I'm trying to speedrun the game in like 2 hours or something. But um, yeah, that doing it in 8 hours, I maybe struggle with a little bit the first time just because like I've never played that fast. So yeah. um, Let me see. Jay Hunt asks, you said you would. This is a question, I think. Um, oh no, that's not a question. Sorry. Some of these are like worded exactly like a question that I picked out, and then I realized they're actually not. Okay. Misa Elf asks, what do you think about modded play or vanilla play? Is it worth playing with mods? What do you prefer? Personally, I usually prefer vanilla. That is completely an opinion. Um, I think there's nothing wrong with modded play. I think it's certainly worth playing with mods if you don't have any interest in vanilla anymore. I don't know that I can reason like that's kind of a hard question to actually answer. Like like it's worth it if you don't enjoy the vanilla gameplay anymore. But if you're still having a blast with vanilla, I don't really know that you need to add mods. And yeah, and like in terms of what I think about them, I think modded gameplay definitely adds like so much more. Uh, I don't know, versatile gameplay and options and late game options and different styles of play. I think that's really only necessary if you no longer enjoy the vanilla game or just completely out of things to do. Um, like what drives this is a little bit of a tangent, but what drives me nuts, like I know this like doesn't affect me at all. Like so like it's not like it's like personally affecting me, but just like a pet peeve of mine is when people like start like they'll do like a one vanilla run, like launch a rocket, or some people like won't even launch a rocket. They'll just play like once and then they go and install like Bob's Angels, and it's like, why would you do that? Like it just drives me nuts. It's like that's where I have a pretty hard opinion where it's like you literally played the game once the way it's meant to like just the vanilla like the true experience of it or didn't even complete it technically and then you go add stuff that basically gives you a whole new game. It's like, I just don't understand. Or some people just don't even play it once. Some people literally, I've seen questions come up and people are like, hey, I just bought the game and installed Bob's Angels and I'm really confused. It's like, yeah, like no shit. Like you don't even know how the basics of the game work, and you're installing these mods that basically make it a whole new game, but still require the same gameplay principles you use in the vanilla game. So I don't know. Like I said, it's a bit of a tangent, but like that's what really drives me nuts. Is I think it's ridiculous to install all these mods unless you're actually like bored of the vanilla gameplay. And then at that point, like it's fine, do whatever you want. But so yeah, that's the answer to your question. Um, Daniel asks, "What's the most complicated Factorial mod pack you've beaten?" Craftorio 2, and that's not even that complicated. Um, I mean, I don't know. Did I technically beat space exploration? I think I got really close. I don't know if I technically beat the game. I don't know. I got really, really late game. That's about it. I don't like complicated mod packs. I never have. I probably never will. Um, I just don't. I just don't really enjoy them that much, to be honest. um. So yeah, there's that. Let's see. Uh, the J Meister asks, in train-based worlds, do you make slash design layout your starter base with the transition to trains in mind, and how do you smooth the transition to using trains from an initial bus base that only makes, for example, red, green, black, and possibly blue science? I often find myself hurting for crucial resources like iron and coal before really getting my train network up and running. Additionally, how do you space out production facilities along an existing train network? Um, so this is kind of an interesting set of questions. I'm gonna start with the first one. Um, I don't lay out my starter base with the transition to trains in mind, because usually, okay, so yeah, this is kind of hard because usually, like I do usually bring in trains to my starter base like later on, but I usually just bring them in like wherever I need them. Okay, I guess I kind of do it with trains in mind, but it's like a very basic principle that I think you should be following anyway. It's like when I have a starter base and I bring in trains, I pretty much always bring in the trains like behind the smelters, like so like where the resources are fed into the smelters, and there's basically always room there because I'm never building anything else behind that. Like I unless you're building some insane spaghetti base, I would hope that you would not be building your base like backwards, like behind your smelters. So unless you've like backed your smelters up to like a gigantic lake, um, then I would hope you would have room there, and that's usually just where I bring in my trains. If not, so I mean, I guess that's like the level of planning I do is I just don't back my smelters into a corner, and then there's just room for trains. In terms of like, also just to touch on, when you said, for example, a base that only makes red, green, black, and possibly blue science, I don't really like. I never have a base like that. My starter base always makes every single type of science. Like my starter base will always make all the way up to yellow science. Sometimes like space science as well, but it never just stops at like blue science. I just always have my initial base make every single science so I can do basically all the research I need to before transitioning to a megabase. Um, and you say you often find yourself hurting for crucial resources like iron and coal before really getting my train network set up and running. Um, I would say, like, if that's the case, I'd honestly say set your resource patches like bigger or richer. If you're really struggling with it, and depending out, like, don't be afraid to run a fairly long belt. Like, I would not encourage using belts for super long distance transport like later on, but earlier on, before you have trains, if you need to run a belt that's like thousands of tiles away and you don't have trains yet and you don't think you have the resources to get to trains, don't be afraid of doing that. Like that's viable and it's expensive, but it will get you resources until you can get trains. For your last question about spacing out production facilities along an existing train network, that's kind of hard. Usually I just I mean, usually I don't usually build. Well, do I build my train network? No, usually I don't even build like my entire train network before my facilities because then I end up running out of space. But if I did have that, I would space them out just so there's like usually I like to have about 1 to 2 train lengths, so whatever train length you're running, 1 to 2 full train lengths between junctions, and that's like how far I'll space out my production areas, so that the junction from the main line to like go in and out of the production area is like an absolute minimum of 1 full train length away from the previous junction and the next junction, usually more like 2 train lengths, just to be safe. Because what you don't want is a train stopping at one junction and then having its tail, like stick out into the junction before that one, and so on and so forth. So that's like kind of the way I like to space it out. Um, and I mean, obviously making sure there's room for the builds themselves. Um, so hopefully that helps out. Hopefully that helps answer your question. Origami Phoenix asks, sorry if you answered this before, but what do you actually do for a living? This is literally what I do for a living. This is it's funny, so many people, I mean, I don't know, I mean, I don't make it like super obvious, but this is what I've been doing for a living. This is my full-time job for the last like 3 years. Yeah, so it's surprising to me how many people don't know that. But so this is why, like, when I ask, like, if you tune in my streams and I'm acting like, I'm kind of, I'm like, well, when I'm like really thankful for people's support, or like, I say, if you want to help support the channel, check out Patreon or donate. Um, like, I'm not doing it just because I'm like money hungry. Like, I'm doing this because that's how I pay my bills. So, like this is my job, So that's why I'm like really so appreciative of like people who support the channel. And like when I say, if you can, it's much appreciated, because this is how I make my paycheck. Is doing YouTube and streaming. Um, Let me see. Um, Shadowhinge asks, Coke or Pepsi? Probably Coke, although I don't really drink soft drinks or sodas, so I don't really have much of a preference, but I guess Coke. I've only had Pepsi like twice, and I really don't remember how it compares, to be honest. Um, yeah, that's that. Let me see. A lot of these are phrased as questions, but Michael Lynch asked, should you play vanilla for your first game or modded? I refer you to my question a few minutes ago in my huge rant. Absolutely play vanilla. Like, I'm not even going to go into another rant. Like, I hope you heard my previous rant like a few minutes ago in the video. Do not play modded for your first game. It makes no sense. You might as well just not even play the game. Because, like, because you're not, just don't, okay? At least try vanilla once, like a full playthrough before you start adding mods, okay? Especially for Factorio. Like, if it were like a broken ass game that needed mods for it to even be playable, that's one thing. But Factorio is so stable, so playable, so complete without any mods. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever to be adding mods to your first playthrough. Another question from Michael Lynch said, should I go nuclear without solar, or just go solar because nuclear takes less room but makes more power, but needs a lot of power for the fuel cells and takes forever to build? Or should I waste space on solar, which requires a whole 5 hours expanding to get the power I need? That's kind of a personal choice. Like, I mean, solar is a lot more performance friendly, and it doesn't require constant upkeep. Like, so, like you don't have to constantly be making fuel cells. It does take a lot more space for sure and produces less power. So it's kind of a matter of like, do you have the resources and stuff to like keep up fuel cell production? And I mean, nuclear is expensive. It does produce a lot of power though. Or like if you have like huge sections of space where there's nothing built, you could lay down solar. Like, it's a pain, don't get me wrong, but if you have or get a solar layout and then just stamp it down, then it's just a matter of like having bots build it. Like, I would I would certainly hope you're not just building the solar panel, like placing the solar panels by hand if you're doing some huge layout. So yeah, I don't know, it's kind of a personal preference at that point. If you're having any sort of performance problems in the game, like your UPS and FPS are dropping, then I would definitely say solar. But if that's not really the case, then it's kind of up to you, I suppose. And I believe that is all the questions. Quite a few this week, guys. Thank you so much. Hopefully I answered questions. Apologies for like my little rants and stuff. But there are a few things that just drive me a little bit crazy. But yeah, I think that's going to do it. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you have questions you would like me to answer, leave them in the comments of this video, and I will answer them in next week's video. Also, I hope everyone is having or has had a fantastic Thanksgiving if you celebrate it, and is staying safe and such. And even if you don't celebrate it, I hope you have a great day. And yeah, I believe that'll do it, guys. If you did enjoy it, a like is much appreciated. If you're new to the channel, subscribe to keep up with all the content. And until next time, I look forward to seeing you all, and do take care.